The coffee shop smelled like vanilla and fresh rain. I was sitting near the window, still wearing my U.S. Army uniform, the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders. Outside, the Wisconsin afternoon was gray and cold, the kind of weather that makes you want to disappear into your own thoughts. I had just come from my parents' house, a place that had never quite felt like home. I was tired, not from travel or duty, but from something deeper, something I could never name. Then a man approached my table. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with graying hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too much loss. He stopped a few feet away, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. At first, I thought he was another veteran or maybe someone who wanted to thank me for my service. But his gaze was different. It wasn't admiration, it was recognition. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but may I ask you something?" I nodded, setting down my coffee. "Were you born in Wisconsin?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes," I answered automatically. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly. "Are you sure?" Something in his voice made my chest tighten. Before I could respond, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a worn photograph. "This was my wife," he said quietly. I looked down at the photograph. A young woman, dark hair, soft smile, and eyes that looked exactly like mine. My breath caught. "She disappeared in 1987, he continued, his voice breaking. "She had a baby. That baby would be about your age." I stood up, my hands shaking. "I think you're mistaken," he nodded slowly. "I hope I am." But neither of us believed that. "My name is Lieutenant Colonel Hannah Brooks. I am 36 years old. I have served 14 years in the United States Army. I have led soldiers through some of the hardest missions imaginable. I have earned every rank, every medal, every moment of respect. People often thank me for my service. They tell me I'm strong. They say I must have had a tough life to make it this far. They're right. But not for the reasons they think. The hardest battle I ever fought didn't happen in a war zone. It didn't happen on foreign soil. It happened in my own childhood home in Madison, Wisconsin. This is the story of how I discovered that my entire identity was built on a lie, and how the truth, when it finally came out, changed everything. Madison, Wisconsin is a beautiful town. Tree-lined streets, good schools, families who wave to each other in passing, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and secrets are supposed to stay hidden. From the outside, my family looked perfect. My father, Richard Brooks, was a respected accountant, quiet, methodical, always in control. He wore crisp shirts and polished shoes and never raised his voice. My mother, Elaine Brooks, was the picture of suburban grace. She volunteered at church, organized school fundraisers, and baked cookies for every neighborhood event. People loved her. And then there was my younger brother, Kyle. Kyle was the golden child. The favorite, the one who could do no wrong, and then there was me. I wasn't mistreated in obvious ways. There were no bruises, no screaming matches, no locked doors or withheld meals. What made my childhood painful was subtler than that. I was always separate. Kyle got birthday parties with friends, balloons, and laughter. I got a cake at home with just the four of us. Kyle got praise for small achievements. A B on a test was celebrated. I was expected to succeed quietly without fanfare. Kyle was protected. When he made mistakes, my parents stepped in to fix them. When I made mistakes, I was told to figure it out myself. Whenever relatives came over, my mother would smile and say, "Hannah's the responsible one." It sounded like pride. But it felt like a sentence. By the time I was 10 years old, I knew the rules of survival in my own home. Don't interrupt, don't complain, don't ask for more. When Kyle forgot his lunch, I was the one who ran it to school. When Kyle struggled with homework, I was the one who stayed up late helping him understand math problems and writing essays. When Kyle broke the rules and came home past curfew, I was the one who covered for him, telling our parents he had been with me. My parents never asked me to do these things. They didn't have to. I had learned early that being useful was the safest way to exist. If I was helpful, if I was quiet, if I didn't cause problems, maybe they would notice me. Maybe they would love me the way they loved Kyle. One night when I was 13, I finally built up the courage to ask my mother a question that had been burning inside me for years. We were in the kitchen, she was washing dishes, I was drying them as always. "Mom," I said quietly, "why do you treat Kyle differently than me?" She didn't look angry, she didn't even look surprised. She just looked tired. She sighed and said, "Because you're stronger, Hannah, Kyle needs more care." That was the first time I felt something crack inside me. Because strength shouldn't mean being loved less. But I swallowed the pain the way I always did. When I turned 18, joining the army felt like the most natural decision in the world. The structure made sense, the discipline felt familiar, the expectations were clear, most importantly, the pain had purpose. In the army, when you suffered, it was for a reason. When you endured, you earned respect. Pain with purpose was better than silence with endless, unspoken expectations. At basic training, while others struggled and cried and called home, I felt oddly calm. The drill sergeants yelled. The physical training was brutal. The days were long and exhausting. But I knew how to endure. I had been doing it my whole life. I rose through the ranks quickly. Sergeant by 23, officer candidate school by 25, captain by 28. Major by 32, I earned every promotion. I worked harder than anyone. I led with integrity. I never backed down from a challenge. My parents attended ceremonies when it was convenient. They clapped politely when I received awards. They smiled in photographs. Kyle never came. Once, after a promotion ceremony, my mother pulled me aside and said, "Just don't let this career become your whole identity, Hannah." I didn't answer, because it already was. The army was the only place I had ever felt like I belonged. 3 years ago, I returned home to Wisconsin on leave. I was still wearing my uniform when I stopped at a small coffee shop near my parents' house. I needed a moment to breathe before walking into that familiar, suffocating space. That's when Michael Carter approached me. He stared at my face like he was looking at a ghost. His hands trembled as he reached for his wallet. The photograph he showed me changed everything. A young woman with dark hair and soft eyes, eyes that looked exactly like mine. "This was my wife," Michael said, his voice breaking. "She disappeared in 1987. She had a baby. That baby would be about your age." My heart pounded, my mouth went dry. "I think you're mistaken," I managed to say, but I knew he wasn't. Something in my chest told me the truth before my mind could catch up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that woman's face, those eyes, the resemblance was undeniable. I searched for my birth certificate in the old filing cabinet in my parents' basement. It took me an hour to find it, buried beneath tax documents and old school records. When I finally pulled it out, my hands were shaking. Hospital, St. Mary's Medical Center, Illinois. Illinois, I had been told my entire life I was born in Wisconsin. The next morning, I confronted my mother at breakfast. I laid the birth certificate on the table. "Why does this say Illinois?" She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "That paperwork is old," she said quickly. "Why are you digging into the past?" That word, digging, confirmed everything, because the truth was something buried, something hidden. I contacted Michael Carter. We met at a quiet diner on the edge of town. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. "I need to know the truth," I said. He nodded. "So do I." We agreed on one thing: truth mattered, no matter how painful it might be. We did a DNA test through a commercial testing service. I swabbed my cheek in the parking lot. Michael did the same. The waiting nearly broke me. For 2 weeks, I couldn't focus. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but my mind was somewhere else. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. When the results came back, Michael called me. He was crying. "Hannah," he said through tears. "You're my daughter?" I sat on the floor of my apartment for an hour, not crying, not angry, just empty. Everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. I drove to my parents' house the next day. I didn't call ahead, I didn't prepare a speech. I just drove. When I walked in, they were sitting in the living room. My father was reading the newspaper. My mother was knitting. I laid the DNA results on the coffee table. My father went completely silent. His face turned pale. My mother collapsed into tears. "Tell me the truth," I said quietly. And finally, after 36 years, they did. Michael's wife, Sarah, had been their friend. When she became pregnant, she was scared and alone. Michael had left for a work opportunity out of state, planning to return in a few months. Sarah trusted my parents to help her. She stayed with them during the pregnancy, but something went wrong. My mother couldn't have children of her own. She had been trying for years. She was desperate. When I was born, Sarah disappeared. My parents claimed I was theirs. They forged documents. They moved to Wisconsin. They started a new life. No adoption, no paperwork, no legal process, just silence. I asked one question. "Why did you treat me like I didn't belong?" My mother whispered through her tears. "Because you reminded us of the lie." I left that night. One bag, no yelling, no screaming, no dramatic goodbye. Just clarity. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. I didn't look back. Michael Carter wasn't perfect. He was awkward at first. He didn't know how to be a father to a grown daughter. He fumbled with words and apologized too much. But he never treated me like a burden. He told me about Sarah, my real mother. He showed me photographs. He shared stories about her laugh, her kindness, her dreams. "She searched for you," he said quietly one evening, "until the day she died." That truth hurt more than anything. She had looked for me. She had never given up, and I never knew, but it also healed something inside me because I wasn't unloved. I was stolen. I stayed in the army, but now I served by choice, not out of obligation. Not to prove something, not to fill the emptiness of being unloved. I served because I wanted to. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be free. Freedom wasn't about running away. It was about choosing who you wanted to be without guilt, without fear, without the weight of someone else's expectations. Some families don't hurt you with violence. They hurt you with expectations, with silence, with love that comes with conditions. They hurt you by making you feel like you have to earn what should be given freely. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to choose yourself. Today, I am Lieutenant Colonel Hannah Carter. I changed my last name, not to erase the past, but to honor the truth. Michael and I have dinner every Sunday. We talk about books, about politics, about life. Sometimes we sit in comfortable silence. He tells me I remind him of Sarah. And for the first time, that comparison doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like home. I haven't spoken to Richard and Elaine Brooks since that night. They tried to reach out once through a lawyer, but I declined. Some people might say I should forgive them. That family is family no matter what. But I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about love, it's about safety, it's about being seen, and I finally have that. If you were always the strong one in your family, if you were always the responsible one, if you were always expected to endure while others were protected, ask yourself why. Because love doesn't require endurance, and family shouldn't feel like survival. You deserve better. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe that.